and welcome to the Simplicity Effect, where we discuss messaging that matters and uncover innovative strategies to boost business performance through simplicity and curiosity. I'm Tori, and today we're exploring the future of messaging, including the world of rich messaging like RCS business messaging. And joining us today is Brad Down. He's Chief Innovation Officer for Kudosity. So we're very excited to have him join today. Welcome, Brad.
Thanks, Tori. It's great to be here. This is my very first podcast, would you believe it?
Your first real one, maybe?
First real one, yeah.
AI generated?
Yeah. Yes, the old AI generated podcast. I've been practicing a bit. It's always something I wanted to do, but haven't really sort of mustered up the professional environment required. This is all very fancy.
Yeah, it is quite the setup. So maybe to get us started, if you could give us a little bit of an overview of your background in innovation, technology and messaging as well, because you've obviously got a really deep background in messaging platform technology.
Yes, so I've always been interested in technologies. Well, our initial goal was to get a self-serve sort of website platform up and running that would end up becoming a business, and text messaging was part of that platform, but it wasn't our primary objective. After the initial startup failed due to the launch of obviously smartphones and different things that were going on, the SMS componentry of that particular application ended up becoming very interesting to a lot of other companies, and we started putting on clients and started sending text messages in a more generic sense, and became quite successful at it in the end. My roles at the company were to do mostly in the early days of building out the conceptual application and doing the UI, UX design, doing marketing and support and lots of different things early on. So I've had my hands deep in the process for a long time.
Okay, great. And because you have had your hands deep in the process, it's you're probably the perfect person actually to break it down for us. If we kind of start with the basics before we kind of dive into rich messaging, if you could maybe just explain for a layman like myself, what is RCS? So I've got it on my phone now. I can see the little ticks come up when I receive a message and when other people have read my message. So what's the difference between that and RCS business messaging?
Okay, so RCS is touted as being SMS on steroids, essentially. It's the new messaging protocol. Now, both Google and Android ecosystem have created RCS, and Apple in their ecosystem have created iMessage. These are both rich messaging protocols which can send video, can send high-resolution images, can do things like read receipts and typing indicators, and these are the kind of things that the SMS protocol that we used to right now, in, as far as business messaging is concerned, don't have. These protocols, they were invented by Google and Apple, obviously, to transfer these types of advanced media. However, because of obviously the competitive nature of Google and Apple in the past, they don't talk to each other. So if you're on Android and you send a message to an Apple phone, it comes up as a green message and a blue message on there. So they call it the blue and green message wars. So now recently Apple has announced that they will be supporting RCS as a protocol, and we will be doing away with the whole kind of blue-green war. And that, so if you like a message on an iPhone, for example, that was received from an Android phone, you will actually get a little like icon rather than the word liked in brackets, for example. So it's just going to be a much more seamless process. So the relationship of RBM in this instance is RBM is RCS business messaging, which is the connectivity layer for businesses and brands to be able to tap into this messaging network and deliver messages. It also extends beyond just the peer-to-peer process. It can also do things like carousels. It can do what's called suggested responses, where if you've got send a message, you can say it's almost like a navigation system for a text message, essentially. So there's a few things like that can be put in. The other thing is also you can do branded senders and a lot of more of the security protocols and the trust through links, where we're using buttons instead of URL shorteners and different things. So that's essentially the RBM layer. So it's exciting and also a bit of a nervous time because there's still no absolute confirmation that Apple will support the RBM protocol, but from the insider knowledge that I'm hearing, and a few experts in the industry are saying that it'll just be supported out of the box, and then as soon as it's basically available, we should be able to see RCS messages delivered to Apple handsets via the RBM network.
Okay, cool. And obviously there are already rich messaging services out there with verified senders available like WhatsApp and Viber. So, what's different about this? Why should businesses care if they're already using SMS, they've already got WhatsApp?
WhatsApp has been and Viber, and there's a whole bunch of them, right? You've even got Facebook Messenger, and you've got in China, we've got WeChat, and there's a whole bunch of different, what they refer to as OTP services, which are generally ecosystems run by different companies. They're not run through the messaging protocol per se. Where RCS becomes a more powerful proposition is that it's just basically essentially a replacement for SMS and MMS. These apps are installed by default on phones. It's not like something where, you're going to have to get your grandma to download WhatsApp and try and send her messages and different things. This is essentially just a much more frictionless protocol. And also the other big piece of this particular puzzle is that the carriers are going to be participating in delivery. So we're not relying on Meta. And should, a protocol like WhatsApp become a primary business channel, you're going to be beholden to the Meta ecosystem, the Meta pricing structures. And if you know anything about how Meta has increased the cost of doing business, especially in their Facebook ads and all of that kind of stuff, there is no control over what they do with that pricing. They will just put it up however they want. With RCS, obviously, because the carriers will be controlling the pricing and aggregators like Kudosity will be controlling the pricing, therefore there will be a competition or a competitive nature to that particular connectivity industry. So we should see prices for RCS hover around similar prices to what we're seeing for SMS today.
Okay, and I was actually having a bit of a poke around and looking at some of the functionality and the templates available via RBM, which looks pretty cool. How would you recommend that we start looking at ways to incorporate RBM into our customer engagement? And, in your mind, are there any specific use cases that are going to be really improved by using RBM?
Yeah, the first and most obvious one is let's get an MMS replacement. We've been trying for years to deliver the simplest images through the MMS channel, and it's still expensive and it's super poor quality. So the first step, I think, is just simply to be able to deliver some kind of rich media via the RBM channel into RCS-enabled handsets. The other huge piece that we really need to focus on is obviously trust. Trusted links are becoming really problematic, I guess, for the messaging industries, because current recipients are very skittish on clicking on links in text messages due to the high number of scams being run through link shortening services like Bitly and these kinds of things. And I think they are now taking the stance, I'm just not going to click on anything in a text message. So with RBM, we will see trusted, so you'll have to go through a brand approval process, and you will have a registered brand that can deliver via the RBM network. And within that, you will then have buttons that you click on. So you won't see URLs. We won't need to use URL shorteners. You'll be able to actually use proper branded links and branded buttons, so rather than having to do that. So those will be, I think, the two key starting points. Moving beyond that, there will be obviously engagement. Engagement becomes a huge thing, and attribution are two massive parts of where we've struggled to really achieve traction within that industry, and I'd love to see how RCS can help.
I guess you mentioned SMS and MMS a few times. And obviously, to some extent, trust has been broken with those channels. Obviously, there's a lot of scamming and spamming. There's been a lot of regulation to try and address that. And I guess on top of that, obviously, some markets, like Europe with GDPR and, in APAC, Australia's redoing their privacy legislation as well to tighten it up. So in this kind of environment, how important is data privacy and security when implementing messaging strategies that use rich messaging services like RBM? And do you actually see an opportunity that RBM will actually help businesses become more compliant with some of these new legislations and regulations that are rolling out?
Well, I mean, from the trust perspective, the promise is there. I don't know the ins and outs of how it actually works or what encryption means or different things until we actually get our hands on it and start utilising it. But if we look at the promise of what RCS can bring through verified senders, the need for shortening links and the trust that goes through those things, and also the ability for spammers and scammers actually to be able to deliver into the RBM network because of there'll be stringent, not stringent, but certainly verification and identification processes that brands will need to go through in order to be able to send. So as far as it's not just going to be as a spammer, I can just go and find an API that sends text messages and start sending them. That's just not going to be probably a real situation for RCS providers. As far as the transfer of encrypted data through these processes, we're heading into a world of quantum computing now. So that's going to be like a super interesting evolution in the next, they're saying in the next 5 years even, we could see the first stages of quantum decryption. In a world that needs modern protocols, we have to have that, and we don't have that right now. And I believe that companies like Apple and Google can bring the level of innovation needed at this messaging layer to cope with what quantum computing means for an encryption and decryption and security.
And looking, I guess, across other markets that have already started to transition to RBM, have you got any learnings from those markets, particularly around maybe metrics and how we might need to actually shift how we evaluate the success of our messaging activity and campaigns?
I don't think there needs to be a huge amount of shift in the things. The things that we're trying to do right now are in the realm of engagement, in the realm of attribution. These kind of things are still they're still the primary success criteria, I guess, for messaging campaigns. If we look at RBM, there's a few case studies out there recently. I know that some of the Android-only delivery campaigns that have been happening through a few different providers have seen sort of 3x uplifts in engagement. So we're seeing some definite increase in the potency of RCS campaigns per se. The attribution side of things, I think, will be a lot easier because of the facilities around carousels, for example, within the RCS ecosystem. So you could have multiple variations of different products and different creatives and then track through which ones are the most successful. And, if AI kind of focusing tools come to fruition, we will see success criteria be sort of developed around, again, creative focusing based on engagement.
Okay. And just, I guess, continuing on that path of looking at other markets and some of the learnings there, have you kind of seen any early indicators of potentially what that means for other rich messaging platforms like WhatsApp, like Viber, and also how we, I guess, implement omnichannel activity as well? Yeah,
I mean, I think channel is always going to be a difficult thing. The promise of omnichannel delivery is that the recipient or contact within a campaign can choose however they wish to receive the message. And that might be through WhatsApp, that might be through instant messaging, it might be through RCS, it might be through WeChat, it might be through Facebook Messenger. There's a lot of different channels that people can generally prefer to receive messages on. And this promise has been out there for quite a while, and there's been many companies have made an effort at attempting to do this for probably 5 years now. However, the biggest issue that I have seen in regards to the promise of that omnichannel ecosystem is the variation in the creatives that are needed to be produced in order to deliver to those channels. And the only really common sort of thing is the idea of some text and a picture. Everything else tends to be specific to the channel. And I don't really see a world in where businesses and brands are going to create 8 different sets of creative for 8 different omni-channels per se. I don't think that's a reality. I think what we may see is potentially a primary channel like RCS or WhatsApp, if Meta has it its way, where you will, like similar to the old email HTML version and the fallback text version. So you'll have 2 different variations of a creative, and then that will be so you would do your primary version, which would possibly through, in our world would be RCS, and then you would have a fallback version, which might be an MMS and an SMS, which would just be a picture and an image and a link, potentially depending on what the commonalities between all the different omni-channels come up with.
Although thinking about that, and I guess because you're right, there's like a plethora of permeations that you could do. But it's quite a nice lead-in because you can't have a podcast without talking about AI. And obviously AI enables you to scale in that way. How do you see AI and RBM working together to scale authentic conversations?
Absolutely. I mean, we've been focused on AI now for 5 years. We're doing things, but the biggest thing is the future of AI, as far as I see, is not chatbots. So what AI is, and this is where I'm starting to see companies like Salesforce and larger organizations focusing on the concept of agents. And what an agent is essentially an AI tool that is focused on a specific purpose. So, for example, it might be updating an address or collecting a new email or facilitating a lead conversion or updating a transaction or different things. And that agent is given a very specific set of criteria in order to meet certain things. So therefore, it can have a very strong context of what it is supposed to do. So it can have that conversation in a far superior and engaged and purposeful way. RCS is going to help this immensely through its ability to deliver rich media, to stimulate engagement through different suggested responses, even through things like read receipts and typing indicators to give it that really humanized kind of feel, as if it's the person who's engaging knows when they're going to get a message back again. They can actually stay engaged and keep chatting to the AI. Link actions and suggested responses, like I said, will be able to be built right into the message flow. So this will allow enormous ability to scale through AI processing and the fast filtering to operators. So operators of a campaign will only receive the most important conversations. So it will see like a triage in a hospital. You basically, all the easy ones will all get handled by AI. Then you'll have sort of semi-hard ones, which will be sort of semi-handled. And then very, very difficult conversations can be then handled by a live operator and processed accordingly. So this allows for the scale of messaging conversations that this promises.
So you gave some really good examples there of personalised and highly interactive communication. In terms of this new technology, what opportunities do you think it'll unlock in the next 3 to 5 years? So if we're sitting here doing this podcast in 5 years' time, what are we going to be talking about?
I believe, the objective of what my involvement in all of this stuff has been is purely the removal of friction between businesses and people. I absolutely deplore having to call a company and try to do things like change my address or send some ID or try to engage with their support services. What I'd really like to be able to believe is that those kinds of engagements and interactions can actually just be handled by AI, by conversations. It's not like we're not trying to replace all of these jobs and all of this kind of stuff, but we're just really trying to remove the friction of those processes. I think that as the intelligence of AI agents increases and we get more focused on solving problems rather than just trying to chase this forever ethereal AGI or this artificial general intelligence that people keep talking about that is supposed to replace people's jobs, I don't believe we'll really see anything like that probably for decades. What we will see, though, I believe, is AI doing or being an assistant to people within their roles to remove friction from very tedious and time-consuming processes that they just don't need to be doing. And this is where I think that RCS, AI in messaging, humanization of messaging, that can really be the future of what we are trying to do.
Yeah, and look, to be honest, I don't think I could live without it now. I think even today I've been in about 4 different AI tools doing just that, right? The really horrible stuff that I don't want to do myself, like formatting or reading a whole heap of documentation, getting it to summarize it and querying it and things like that. So, yeah, I don't think I could ever go back now.
Yeah, I mean, I was working with one of our campaign managers, and they're now using the AI to write entire campaigns, or at least find a starting point for a campaign. So we're seeing some very interesting work going into prompting AI with an end game of how do I get the best results for this campaign and what do I need to go through. So, and with the new OpenAI, with the thought, so that they think out, the AI now thinks out the different steps. So if you don't like one of the steps it's going through, you can adjust it slightly, and the amount of thinking that the AI is putting into actually processing campaigns and how to do things, it's very, very cool.
At the moment, obviously, we're still interacting predominantly from a text perspective. What role do you think voice will play going forward with engaging with AI?
I keep swinging back and forwards. My belief is that people will just talk to their earbuds moving forward. So I've seen the new Meta AI, the new Meta AR glasses that have come out. I've seen some reviews of these things, and although they're still apparently a fair few years away from being commercially available. However, you will basically have a pair of glasses that AR activated that you can talk to, that will literally solve a whole bunch of problems in the context of your space. So wherever you are and whatever you're doing, you can talk to your augmented reality glasses and say, I need to find this, or I need to do this, or I need to know who that person is over there. You know, these kind of questions that you might have in relation to your location and in your space. So voice will be used to have those conversations in those situations. And I think that you also potentially receive conversations coming in from, like I said, businesses, given where you are. So if you're walking around in the city, for example, and you're hungry, you'll go like, well, where can I find some good yum cha? And then basically, you'll get some little arrows pop up on your AR glasses and just point you in the right direction. So, well, this place has been reviewed 5 stars. You can go here. Yeah, but I mean, that's there are so many different possibilities for voice and messaging in that space. The promise has been around for ages. However, even with things like Siri and Amazon Alexa, it just hasn't really got there. You're just not quite getting the frictionless results that you need. It's just becoming essentially another search engine that's just voice activated. You go, what's the weather today? It's the same sort of thing that you can just get from doing a Google search. It's not conversational, it's questioning.
And look, when I first saw the launch of the Meta glasses, I thought, yeah, that's really cool. But listening to you talk, and particularly when you were saying, when you see a person and, who is that person? I was like, oh, yeah, that'd be really useful. I'm always forgetting people's names. And I thought, oh, my God, can you imagine if it starts bringing up all this personal information about people you're just out and about, and all of a sudden, Minority Report style?
Yeah, well, I remember, God, it'd be 10 years ago now, they had AR built into phones, and you could hold your phone up to a room of people, and if they had a Twitter account, you could actually see the person's Twitter handle above would actually recognise the person. Obviously, if they gave permission to be able to be seen in that way, but that was you could actually do that. So that technology's been around for a little while. But I'd think that if you were putting yourself into a conference situation, for example, you would turn on your AR presence, if you like, and say, I want people to be able to see my LinkedIn profile, for example, when I'm walking around this conference, so they can see who I am, and if they're interested in coming and talking to me, they can. So you would turn it on in specific spaces depending on where you were and what you were doing, and that would be my imagination of what that kind of process looks like. But I think that's cool. Like I really think that would be cool and useful. Not so much an invasion of privacy. Yeah, it's like, but there's obviously the privacy concerns around all of that kind of thing are are massive, and it's probably another reason why people don't engage. I think there's also obviously the whole concept of using cameras on devices like glasses and being able to film people covertly and different things. And I think there's a lot of concerns around that kind of behaviour as well. So there's going to need to be obviously conscious thought from hardware developers like Meta put into how do they stop people from filming other people covertly. Maybe they have some sort of automatic face filter or something for people within those kind of images.
And look, I mean, obviously, in terms of legislation, they're always trying to play catch up, right? Like they're really struggling to keep pace with technology. So, yeah, unfortunately, it does seem to a certain degree that we are at the mercy of technology vendors.
I don't believe for a second that institutions, like government institutions, will be able to maintain control over this situation. It's going to have to be a self-policed kind of thing until something bad happens, and then of course governments will get involved. But I think that it's, from an innovation standpoint, it's good to allow companies to do that. But look, at the end of the day, if they don't do the right thing, people just won't use their products. So if you're not going to create a product that can be secure, can be private, and can be used, then there's really not much point. But I mean, Meta's already invested, what did they say, it's like $7 billion into Meta Glass. Like, it's just an enormous amount of money. They are not going to not finish that project. Like, that is going to be a product that comes to market.
Yeah, and look, I've seen some of their videos that they've done of the future of work as well, in terms of how people are going to interact and engage in an office environment using them as well, like with no other devices required. So, yeah, interesting times ahead.
Interesting. Yeah, and it's, I guess, from our perspective, it's like messaging and sort of a voice communications perspective. How do we engage in that ecosystem? What does that look like for communications? It's a super interesting question, and I think it's one that we're going to probably have to start asking ourselves pretty soon.
So you've covered a lot of ground, everything from new technology, AI, legislation. There's a lot happening. What should we be focusing on right now to improve the authenticity and effectiveness of our messaging?
Well, interestingly, I was just listening to a podcast from Jason Calacanis this morning, actually. He's saying we are entering right now the next big business technology and innovation cycle. So when there was desktop computers, then we've had the internet, and we've had smartphones. Now we have AI and sensor technology. These technologies are the things that's really going to change the landscape of what we can expect and how we expect to work and engage as human beings. So that's going to be a hugely interesting next few years, and how all that sort of comes together. What can we do right now, I think, is the question that we're all still asking ourselves. And I think that the technology we have at our fingertips right now is still, the trusted SMS is still a great tool. We are delivering more and more campaigns every single day, but we do have to work on the trust, verifications, how we do attribution, how we're doing proper opt-in, securing customer data, providing the simple ability for people just to control what they're receiving and how they're engaging with these campaigns. There's just some of those things that just really we need to focus on right now. And I think that they still will form the bedrock of what we do moving forward with everything else. I don't think that, RCS is not going to be a magic bullet that's going to solve all these problems. We still need to focus as an industry to make sure we are maintaining trust, security, privacy, and we're locking out the bad actors and making sure that scammers and spammers don't have access to these channels. That's what we need to be really super focused on, I think.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights. Really, really interesting discussion. To our listeners, if you do want to learn more about rich messaging and its impact on business communication, there's heaps more assets and info at Kudosity.com. And until next time, stay curious. Thank you.
Thanks, Tori.
Book your demo today and experience Kudosity in action.